Wendy Kiang-Spray is a writer and speaker whose articles about gardening and food have appeared in national and local print publications. Her book, The Chinese Kitchen Garden, is about growing and cooking Chinese vegetables. She gardens in Rockville, Maryland, where she also works in education. Join the Chinese Kitchen Garden Facebook group to be a part of the conversation about all things Asian vegetable related. Over to you, Wendy.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm so excited to do this presentation today because I have so many interesting things to share with you. And this is my favorite type of talk because I'm essentially going to do a little show and tell. I could have also called this show and tell, and I could have also called this the Asian supermarket haul, because that's basically what I did. I went to the Asian supermarket, I grabbed everything that I wanted to show you, and I'm just going to start going through. And I've broken this down into like three different segments. So I have some greens, and then I have some other vegetables that are sort of the Asian counterparts to Western vegetables that you're probably familiar with. And then my last basket is full of fireworks, and that's like interesting things that may or may not be able easily grown here, but are things that I think you should know about. Um, and if you end up with any questions, again, chat's good, even though I can't see them. I'll be able to answer your questions later. And if you think of something later, feel free to just look me up on the internet. I should be easily found, and I'm very responsive. Email me, send me a message on Facebook, whatever. So let's get started. So the first thing I wanted to show you is my basket of Asian greens. I have like maybe 5 or 6 here that I want to talk about. Although if you do go to your big Asian supermarket, you'll probably find much more. So with these greens, let's see, let's start with the first one. This is amaranth. And actually, I don't really see amaranth at the supermarket too much. And just so you know, I went to Great Wall in Rockville just because that is close to me. There are a couple of other great ones that are big where you can find lots of stuff. I don't often see amaranth, but you can always tell it's amaranth because it has these pretty purple and green leaves. Although there is green amaranth, there's all purple amaranth or red amaranth, and this bicolored type, which is the type that my family likes to grow and eat. This is actually a really easy plant to grow, so you can definitely do this in your own garden. And I would just cook it like spinach. So anything that you would do with like a cooked spinach, you can definitely do with amaranth. It will cook pretty quickly, so I would just kind of saute lightly, just till they're wilted. Do some garlic, and that would probably be fine. Some garlic, salt, whatever you want to do would probably be fine. Um, the dish callaloo is often made with these amaranth greens. They're it's often referred to as with these amaranth greens. So that's amaranth. And let's see, I have in my bowl Malabar spinach. Malabar spinach is an interesting one to talk about because around this time of year, all of our regular like spinaches that we grow, like the Ford Hook spinaches, they've all bolted because it's gotten really hot. And if it hasn't, I'm sure this week pretty much did it for us in our area. Malabar spinach you can really grow year round. It's a perennial spinach, really, and it's a vining spinach. You can see the vines wanting to just kind of stretch out and grow. And my dad does this in the garden where it just sort of rambles. And like I said, the leaf, even though I bought this at the supermarket, the leaves would look this fresh right now. With it would just look this fresh, and it would be great. I have a friend who grows this Malabar spinach in a pot. So she will just, she'll grow it and it sits in her carport during the summer. And when it gets cold, she actually brings it inside and just keeps it going year round. As she needs spinach, she just cuts off leaves. So the thing about Malabar spinach, cooked, it's you can cook it like any other Asian green, and Chinese people love to cook their greens, and we pretty much do most of them the same way. There is a recipe that we can share with you. I'll tell you about that in just a sec, but I'll finish talking about this. Um, Cooked, they're great. Raw, I don't love it, but people, my friend Grace, who does grow this in a pot, she likes it raw too. The leaves are kind of thick. They're ever so slightly succulent, and so I find they're just a little bit too thick for me, for my liking. Like in a salad, I'm just not totally into it. But what Grace will also do is she will take some big leaves and she'll just snip them and put them in a bowl and pour soup or whatever she's eating over the leaves, and the slightly mucilaginous quality kind of thickens the soup ever so slightly, and that's the way she loves to do it. Some people have said that this will spread really well. It does spread really fast, but the berries can also drop and become invasive. We've never had that problem, but that just might be something you consider. But if you're looking for a year-round spinach, this is a good one to try. Okay, so I'll talk about the recipe that we have to share with you, and maybe we can drop that in the chat. The recipe is really simple, and it's just my mom's go-to Asian greens recipe, which is basically do whatever preparation you want to do with the greens. And in the case of gailan or Chinese broccoli, we would boil them. You could boil them, steam them, saute them, whatever you want. And then with the recipe, my mom's recipe, you would basically take a little bit of oil, heat it up, throw a ton of garlic in there, and pour all that over your cooked greens. And then this is oyster sauce. You can get this pretty much at any Asian supermarket. This is the brand Lee Kum Kee, which tends to be our favorite. And you just shake a few shakes on top of the oil and the garlic, and you're good to go. As people go to grab their greens, it just kind of all mixes in, and it's a really delicious way to do pretty much any of these greens, but especially the gailan. What I would suggest if you haven't already is maybe get something to write with, just so you can jot down something that you might want to try later on, or you want to Google or look up later on. And I'll just tell you again, this is oyster sauce, and it's the Lee Kum Kee brand. It's very tasty. It does contain oysters, and I will say that we have a lot of vegetarians in my family, and there is a vegetarian version of oyster sauce, and it's made with mushrooms, but it has like a nice kind of rich, savory, umami kind of taste. So that's oyster sauce. So Chinese broccoli is probably our favorite, our meaning everyone in my family. You'll see these thick stems, you'll see these big leaves, and they look kind of ratty, but I'll tell you, once they're cooked up, it'll be beautiful. You can always tell it's Chinese broccoli too, because you will see little florets, and you can just eat the whole thing. You can eat the leaves, the stems, and the florets. So, I would almost compare it to like a broccoli rabe. And as you can see, the stems are really thick. So what is a good idea is to kind of cut this into manageable sizes, and maybe start by boiling your stems and then give that a few minutes first and before you do the leaves, so that it all kind of cooks evenly. And it is a really delicious green. It's described as a little bitter, but I don't think so. I think it's just delicious and perfect, especially the way my mom makes them, and which is how you can too. I will tell you, one of my mom's secrets is a lot of oil, more than you would think, and a lot of garlic, more than you would think. Okay, so next I have these chrysanthemum greens. And if you look at the leaves, they do kind of look like the frilly leaves of those chrysanthemums you might buy in the fall and put on your front porch. but this is from a different variety. And in the supermarket, well, you can recognize this at the supermarket because there's really nothing else that looks like this. I mean, you wouldn't mistake this for parsley, even though it kind of is frilly. And plus, parsley would be in a different section. So it's really the only green that is kind of frilly like this. Um, and you can also tell because there's a little bit of an like herby kind of fragrance. If you've had chrysanthemum tea, there's a similar kind of fragrance. And it's a little bit different from the rest of your greens. So these will wilt down super, small into a small amount. And they also cook really fast. So this is really excellent, like in a hot pot or soup. Around our area, we're lucky because we have a bunch of hot pot restaurants where it's essentially like a Chinese fondue kind of thing, where they'll give you a pot of soup and you can order different types of sliced meat, seafood, or tofu, other vegetarian stuff if you want. And usually, traditionally, these greens are served in hot pots. And so what you would do is just take a few, maybe rip them in half because these are kind of long. Throw them in the pot, and they'll kind of wilt down a little bit. And it's very delicious, and it kind of flavors your soup a little bit as well. So chrysanthemum greens at the supermarket, or in seed catalogs, sometimes they're referred to as garland chrysanthemum, or what else? I can't remember. There's a crown daisy. It doesn't make sense to me, but at my Asian supermarket, sometimes they're referred to as crown daisy. So that's that. And that is easy to grow in your garden too. That will bolt when it gets hot, and you'll have lots of pretty little orange chrysanthemums. So really good for a spring or autumn growing season. I will also say that sometimes you hear that Asian greens are really difficult to grow because they bolt so fast, and they're so fussy. And I guess they're a little bit fussy. I mean, a lot of spring greens are fussy, but Asian greens are really, really nice in the fall. So if you haven't had luck, or if you're looking at starting a fall garden, consider some Asian greens. Okay, this is exception. These are snow pea shoots, and these are snow pea shoots. I say exception because one of my favorite things to do is grow snow peas. And so what I will do is I will usually put a seed, down the row for my snow peas against my little fence, a little pea fence. And then whatever I have left in my hand, I will usually just plop in one pile, and that will be specifically for greens. And these are the greens, and you can recognize them because at the supermarket they're usually called pea shoots or snow pea shoots. But you can always recognize them because the leaves are small and round, and you can almost see like sort of like a white veining. And you can usually find you can usually find these little tendrils in the bag as well. And if you've grown snow peas or any kind of pea, you know what a pea tendril looks like. And these are very, very delicious. These are also a type of green that they're mild, and you don't need to do like a bunch of sauces, like save all your sauces for another dish. This is really fantastic, just lightly sauteed with some garlic, or just a little bit of salt, or whatever you want to season with. And a really great side dish, I would say, on its own. I love snow pea shoots. And snow pea shoots really are usually more expensive than the actual snow peas. So if you're growing them, they are basically the top 10 inches of your snow pea plants. Sometimes you can plant a snow pea plant and cut off the top few inches, and the snow pea plant will just keep going, and you'll be able to have your pods. But generally, once you start seeing a lot of pods on your plant, the shoots won't be as tender and awesome as if you know designated a section for them. So those are snow pea shoots. And then the final green is is an interesting one. And this is called stem lettuce. It's also called celtis, and there are other names too, but generally I call it stem lettuce. And as you can see, there are greens up top, and you can eat them. They're not really super delicious. So my dad used to just take off the greens and feed them to the ducks, because what he and most Asian people are doing is eating the stem. So you can see these little brown notches. That's from ripping off these leaves as they grow. And you rip off these leaves as they grow to encourage the stem to get fatter and fatter, because what you're going for is this big fat stem. And I'm just going to cut this. And you can see that, it's really kind of a juicy inside. A little bit celery-like. It doesn't have the flavor of celery, but maybe that's why they're thinking celery, because why they're calling it celtis, because it's, it's like it's juicy like celery is. But to prepare this, you would, and I have a cutting board down here, but I'll tell you what I'm doing is, to prepare this, you would cut off the leaves. You can do what you want with the leaves. You can eat them raw. You can feed them to your ducks if you have ducks, or you can saute them. And then you're just going to pare this outer part, because, at this point, it's not looking so great. So if you just pare that off, so it looks a little bit nicer, and then you will be able to just cut this how you want to cut it, which would be to either julienne it, cut it into chunks, slice it, whatever. And you can kind of see how it went from looking ratty to something very delicious. This is a favorite vegetable of a lot of people. Definitely something to try, and you can grow on your own. I will say for stem lettuce, fall is probably a really good time to grow those. Okay, I have so many more things to show you, but are there any quick questions on maybe any of these greens? And I guess if you have questions on other greens, maybe it would be best to kind of talk about it in another forum, like email me or message me or join the Chinese Kitchen Garden group, just because I do actually have a ton of other things to show you.
Yeah, no problem. So, quick question about Malabar spinach. Does it have any nutritional advantages over regular spinach?
I'm not sure as far as like comparing the two, but all of these greens are going to be very nutritious. I don't think there's anything here that is sort of like the evil iceberg lettuce, which is now my favorite vegetable. Iceberg lettuce has had such a bad rap for a while, but no, I think all the leafy greens are very nutritious. I can't compare side by side, but I have no reason to believe it wouldn't be super nutritious.
And for the stem lettuce, do you cook the stem or do you eat it raw? And if you do cook it, what are a couple of steps that'd be involved for people?
Okay, so stem lettuce is I guess is similar to celery. I don't want to keep saying that, because I don't want you to think it's celery, but it is similar to celery in that, once you cook it, there is still kind of like that sort of how would you even describe it? Like that sort of like juicy crispness. So it won't get and it's probably preferred to not cook it so that it's totally soft. That's probably why you enjoy it. And you can definitely eat it raw or you can cook it. And if you were to cook it, you could just, do it how you want, how you do your favorite vegetable preparation. But yeah, if I were to eat it raw, I'd probably just julienne it. I think it would probably be very tasty that way. Um, yeah, and I'll try to remember what you can cook and what you can't, and mention it. As far as all these greens, they can all be eaten raw. Um, it's just a matter of how you would prefer to eat it. And like I said, Asian Chinese people love to eat their greens cooked. One time, my mom made a delicious dish of greens, and I was like, "Oh my god, what is this? It's so good!" And it was actually just cooked romaine lettuce done in her way. But it was like the most delicious Asian dish I've ever had. Okay, so my next basket here is, and I was just gonna say, I there my book, The Chinese Kitchen Garden, has some amazing photography in it, and really worth it to check out the book just because of the great pictures of the different vegetables. But also, like I know it's hard to see sometimes, and I'll try to be mindful. But also, if something sounds interesting, just jot it down so that you can look it up later because it's definitely useful to see vegetables in all their forms. It's like the amaranth, for example, and all the different varieties of amaranth. So, okay. So my next basket of things to show you, I would call this basket um, kind of different, but possibly better. First, I will just show you this kabocha pumpkin. It's kind of ugly to begin with, I guess, because this one is not a super gorgeous kabocha. But I did buy this months ago, and it's going to be still perfect on the inside. If you're looking for a good pumpkin to cook, then and you haven't tried kabocha, then try it. And you can grow it too. It's a perfect size to grow. It's nutty. It's drier on the inside, definitely drier than like a pie pumpkin or something. And you could do what you want with this kabocha. You could do it savory. You can make a kabocha pumpkin pie, which I've done before. It blends real smooth, so you could use your favorite butternut squash butternut squash soup recipe, and do kabocha instead. It's just a really great alternative. I love it because it is easy to grow. It's very tasty, and for me, it's the perfect size too. So if you have room in the garden, that would be really a good one to try. If you have room in the garden, you might also consider a daikon radish, because as you can see, and this is a smaller one. As you can see, these guys are really big, and they really kind of break up the soil as they grow. So I've seen a type of daikon radish sold as a tiller radish, and I think that's because they're trying to imply that it tills the soil for you also. So this is great to grow, and I don't love daikon radish. I don't like to just cut and eat it, but I love any form of pickled daikon radish. And I feel like there are pickled daikon radish recipes from every Asian country to just look up on the internet. My favorite might be like a pickled daikon and carrot on my Vietnamese sandwiches. And you can do that easily with this. Julienne the pieces or slice the pieces. And you have a great little side dish. Okay, I have Thai eggplants, and I have a Japanese eggplant. Actually, I'm going to hold them separately. This is a Japanese eggplant. It is so beautiful. And a lot of people like these more than your big globe eggplants because they say they're not as bitter. They say there are fewer seeds and just kind of easier to work with. They're actually very gorgeous too. So give that a try. And you can definitely try these Thai eggplants. I love these because I don't really have great luck with globe eggplants with growing them because of the flea beetles. So yeah, Thai eggplants, and do whatever you want with them the same way as you would do any other kind of eggplant. The beauty of the Thai ones, literally, they're a beauty. And the beauty of them in cooking is that you can cut them in half, you can quarter them, you can throw them in soups, you can, do whatever you want to do with them. You can saute them, you can curry them, there are lots of recipes on the internet too. This is a Chinese cucumber. And when you grow cucumbers in the garden, you'll notice lots of little like spines that are sharp and they will hurt you. Any kind of cucumber, and you can just kind of take a towel. I wouldn't do it with my finger. This is from the supermarket. If it was fresh from the garden, probably would really hurt me. But you can just take a towel and just kind of rub it off. But sometimes when you see burpless cucumbers in a seed catalog, they're actually Chinese cucumbers. They're supposedly more digestible. I'm fine with any kind of cucumber, but these are supposedly more digestible for some people, and they're easy to grow. They're kind of pest resistant, and yeah, and they're fantastic. So I would consider growing that. And then this is a long bean, literally, and that's what they're called. These are really fun to grow in the garden, especially if you have kids or grandkids, or you just want to grow something cool. They dangle down in pairs when they grow, and the key with they require a lot of sun, and it's a big plant, so it needs some sort of structure. The key with cooking them is to remember that this is a Chinese long bean. It is not a French filet bean. So it is not going to be like a super tender, let's blanch it for 3 minutes and put it in a salad kind of bean. It's not tough. I wouldn't say it's tough, but I would describe it as dry. And so these are really great sauteed for a long period of time. Or, when I've roasted a chicken, I have thrown this in with my potatoes and my carrots and my chicken, and they will hold up and roast beautifully. Or in Chinese restaurants, a lot of times they're actually deep fried. So, these are very delicious and definitely fun to grow. Obviously, you wouldn't cook them like this. You would probably cut them into segments and then cook them in your pan. There's actually a purple variety too that I love to grow just because it's so beautiful. When those cook, they do turn green though. All right. Mind if I speed through instead of stopping for questions, because I've saved the best for last?
How about I give you one question?
Okay, fine.
Segment. We've only got one in the questions tab. So, are there any flavor distinctions between Thai and Japanese eggplant?
I don't think so. I mean, like I said, or I don't know if I said, but I think I said, some people view both of them as less bitter than a globe eggplant, but I don't think so. I don't think that there's a mate for me. Well, I'm not a super eggplant connoisseur. I like eggplant foods, but I don't know if I would be able to discern a difference. But if you go to the Asian supermarket, you can usually find both types. Sometimes the Thai eggplants will be in a section of the supermarket where they're kind of like prepackaged and wrapped. So you might need to hunt a little bit, but you can definitely do a taste test.
Yeah, sounds like a great idea.
Yeah, and I think it also depends on how you're going to cook it too. My husband and I had these in college at a restaurant in Rhode Island, and we didn't even know what in the world they were. We called them little pumpkins. We called them little pumpkins for like decades before we realized they were Thai eggplants, because it was in a soup dish and they literally just threw the whole thing in there. And it's fun to eat like that.
Well, wonderful.
Okay.
We look forward to the fireworks.
Okay, fireworks. Let's get ready. All right, let's start with this guy. This is a Luffa Gourd. And this is an angled luffa. There are two types. This is an angled luffa, and it's an angled luffa because it's really long and skinny, and it has these hard ridges. And I guess this is what they would call the angles, but they're basically ridges and they are hard. So, and then there's the smooth luffa, which I couldn't find today, but the smooth luffas are usually shorter than this. This is a big one. The smooth luffas are usually shorter, much shorter than this, like maybe this long, still long, and they're thicker and they have a smooth surface. The thing that's pretty magic about these is that both of them can be eaten like summer squash when they're young. And honestly, I wouldn't wait till they're this big. I probably would harvest when they're smaller. And if you forget, because they are very, this is a very prolific vine, then they turn into the scrubby bath sponges that you can buy at the supermarket. So if you're growing for a sponge, you probably should buy the other one, the smooth luffa or dishcloth luffa, because of the size and the shape. But this will also turn into that scrubby sponge at the end of a long season. So if you're interested in that, you can definitely learn more on the internet. But I'm going to show you how to prepare this for eating. So since this has, I'm just going to use a small section of it. The inside is a little bit spongy. So it's not my favorite texture, but there are people who love Luffa Gourd. And you could use it any way you would use summer squash. And so what you would do is basically just pare the ridges. You don't need to peel the whole thing. You're just cutting the hard ridges off. And when you pare the ridges, they will, you'll see the lighter green inside of the Luffa Gourd. And you can leave the darker part. You can always recognize this in a dish because a lot of times it's prepared like this. You'll see the two colors, and you'll usually see this vegetable prepared by being cut into little coins. And that's how you can recognize it. And after you cut this, you can just saute it. You can, you can braise it. You can add your favorite protein. That's generally how it's cooked. Okay, next, fuzzy gourd. This is another one you can prepare any way you might prepare a summer squash. Keep in mind that this guy has like a high water content. And the trick with fuzzy gourd is that it is indeed covered with fuzz, kind of like peach fuzz. And so to prepare it, all you need to do is use the back of a knife and just lightly scrape you don't need to peel it. You're just lightly scraping the fuzz off. And when you do, you're ready to, I'll cut this open so you can see what it looks like on the inside. You're ready to do what you want with it. This is also related to wax gourd or winter melon. It's like a very juicy melon. So soups would be great. Or, something that's kind of saucy, I think would be great. Okay. Have to show you the bitter melon. Bitter melon is bitter. It is really bitter. But I know all the cooks out there realize the importance of the bitter taste in the culinary world. So I just won't say more. Recently, I've been comparing this to a green pepper because I think it's similar in so many ways. This is bitter melon because you can recognize the ridges. This is an Indian bitter melon. And you can recognize this because the little, warty ridges and, are kind of smaller. But some people say the Indian bitter melon is a little more bitter. But I'm going to show you how to prepare this because I think the biggest trick is how to prepare it. So what we normally do is cut this in half lengthwise. And you will see this really kind of pithy inside, which we don't need to eat, similar to how you don't eat you generally don't eat the pithy white insides of a green pepper. So I'm just taking a spoon and I'm going to scoop this pith out. So once you scoop that out, you're left with a little boat. So if you like to do like something with a zucchini boat or something like that, you could feel free to do that. Or what we usually do is we will cut this into little pieces, little C-shaped segments. So in Chinese restaurants, you'll usually see bitter melon cut this way. And because it is bitter, it's great with a strong taste. So that's why you'll often see like a black bean garlic sauce or something that involves a lot of spice. There is a recipe in my book. There are actually recipes in my book for a lot of these vegetables if you're interested, but you can also find recipes on the internet for anything these days, I'm sure. I also love this pickled. If we were in real life, I probably would have brought some pickled bitter melon because I personally like anything pickled. And it kind of is like a starter way to try bitter melon. Oh, bitter melon is really great because the research has been done to show that it lowers blood sugar in people with diabetes. I'm not a nutritionist. I have had people say that their nutritionists have suggested they add bitter melon. I met a guy once who juices an entire bitter melon. If you're going to grow this, one thing to keep in mind is that the seeds are really, I'm trying to find one, but it looks like they're all cut in half. The seeds are really big and they have a really thick, I can't find a good one. And they have a really thick seed coat. So they need to be like soaked or nicked or sanded before you start them. But you can also grow bitter melon. All right. Luffa Gourd. Lotus Root. I wanted to show you this. It looks like a string of sausages, and it's so ugly. But I wanted to show you how we would prepare this. This is Lotus Root. My daughter's friend this morning said that she saw like Lotus Root chips on a cooking show or something. You may have had that. You may have had sliced Lotus Root in dishes in Chinese restaurants. And this is the root of the aquatic lotus flower plant. I told her that. I was like, the lotus flower, it's like the symbol of all the yoga stuff. And, it's a water plant. This is literally the root that's in the water, in the mud, in the water. So to prepare this, you would basically pare it so that it's not so ugly. And you'll be like, oh my gosh, it's like, it was so gross on the shelf at the supermarket, but now it's so nice. So you basically pare that and then you slice it. And then you have your beautiful lotus root like you might see in restaurants. We actually went to a restaurant in California and San Francisco, yeah. And they had very thinly sliced with a mandolin lotus chips. Okay. I'm going to see what else I can talk about. Let's talk about taro root, also roots. So lotus roots, I'm not sure you're going to be able to grow easily unless you have a pond and you put some energy into it. I would just buy it. Same thing with taro root. This is a tropical corm, so this is going to be difficult for us to do unless you bring plants in and out, and that's just too difficult for me. And best to just go to the supermarket and buy it. So this taro root, it's really kind of weird looking. You're like, what in the world is this? It's kind of furry. And so same thing with this. This must be cooked. Okay, this must be cooked. The lotus root should be cooked. This must be cooked. And you can do that by steaming the whole thing, cutting it open, and then scooping out the inside. Or you could peel it and dice it, which is what I'm going to do today, because I'm going to make a dessert. The recipe is also in my book, but I'm going to make a dessert that involves this sago, these little sago pearls. You can also use tapioca pearls, but I couldn't find tapioca today. It's made from a different plant than this, but I'm gonna boil up these little sago pearls. It's gonna be like tapioca, like old-fashioned tapioca pudding, except I'm going to use coconut milk, and I'm going to peel and dice the taro root, and it'll be delicious, and either warm or cold. It'll be a dessert and it'll be sweetened. But I'm just going to cut this in half so you can see what it looks like on the inside. Oh, this one's just white. Sometimes if you get like a larger taro root, you'll see the little purple filaments in them. And if you go to the supermarket and you buy the Terra brand taro chips, the in the black bag, you can see what a taro chip tastes like. But it's very delicious. It's a starch, so um, you can make it. You can do it sweet or you can do it savory. And if you go to a bubble tea store, you might try taro flavor. Taro is it's such a good match for coconut milk. So if you get like a bubble tea with taro flavor, it's very delicious. And keep in mind that this is what your taro looks like. I'm just going to say one thing real quick, and that is lemongrass, because I did include a recipe for you for a soup, that a Thai soup, which is one of my favorites. Um, and lemongrass is one of the key ingredients. Lemongrass is so okay, it's really tough. So if you're cooking this, you're either going to cut it in sections. You're either going to cut it in sections like this for your soup, and you're going to twist it and just kind of release the flavors. So delicious, very lemony. Um, and throw that in your soup. It'll be like a bay leaf. You're not going to eat it. You're going to take it out. Your guests are going to take it out. Or you can take you're not going to use this top part because this is basically like straw. You can use the bottom section and you can chop it super fine. And in that case, you can eat it. But generally, it's used to flavor things. So just kind of pounding it with a mallet or twisting it and throwing it in a soup really kind of flavors your soup. So there's a recipe for that. I'm a minute later than I planned to be. Can I show you my last thing? Is that
Go
okay?
for it.
Okay, this is my last thing. This I would put in a flower vase, and I usually like to do that after these talks, but it will stink your whole house of garlic, of good garlic, but only if you want that. These are the flowering stems of garlic chives. And if you go to the Asian supermarket, you'll find garlic chives, which a lot of people have had. It's kind of flat and grassy. It's super garlicky, and we eat it like a vegetable. It's not a chive like you sprinkle on a baked potato, but Chinese garlic chives are chopped really fine and maybe added to like a dumpling filling or something. And you will also see yellow chives, which are those garlic chives but grown undercover, so they're deprived of light, and they're like tender and yellow and kind of real delicate flavored. And then these are the flowering stems. They're not usually this open. I bought this just to prove that they will actually they're the flowering tips, and you would eat the whole thing. So you would just cut this into segments and eat the whole thing. There is a recipe in my book for like the most delicious thing that my dad makes, one of the most delicious things, which is like a roast duck and this garlic chives, and it is really delicious. Okay, I got through all my stuff. I hope that was interesting for you. And if there are any questions that we don't answer today, feel free to reach out.
Wonderful. So, inquiring 4-year-old minds want to know. And I know we'd all like to encourage 4-year-old enthusiasm in plants and cooking. So, why does the luffa grow so long? Does it sometimes grow longer or shorter?
I really hope that our 4-year-old will try this in the garden. If there's space in the garden, it does need something to climb. This this does get really long. This is the sequence, okay? First, it's small and short. And at that point, I would probably cut it off of the vine and I would cook it and eat it, and it will taste really good. When it starts to get bigger and bigger, every vegetable as it starts to like be on the plant for a long time starts to not taste so good. For the Luffa Gourd, it will start to get bitter. So there'll be like a bitter phase. Then after that, it's so weird because this stuff, it's like you don't even know where the little fibers come from. It's like it's literally like magic. But all of this will dry out and you'll just see the skeleton, the fibrous skeleton of the plant. And I really hope that that everyone has a chance to grow it. Um, but yeah, it will grow. Um, the long beans will keep growing too. They'll keep growing and growing, but like same thing, they're probably going to taste better when they're a little bit shorter.
So, to continue our theme of asking questions posed to us by 4-year-olds, can you tell us a little bit about a recipe you might make with the bitter melon where that will keep it in its boat shape?
Um, you okay, so what you could do is you could make some kind of filling. You know what? That's another way this is like a green pepper. You could treat it like a stuffed pepper. So you could make a filling that either has like rice or, because my daughter's a vegetarian, so I'm always thinking about her options, but she might do like rice and mushrooms, or I might do like a ground pork, maybe add some ground shrimp or whatever. Basically make a filling and then just fill it in the boat, and you could steam the whole thing, or you could probably roast the whole thing. There is a dim sum restaurant I went to a long time ago where they would, and actually I tried this too. I made it myself. But you could do it in a ring. Like you could cut a ring like this. Like don't cut it in half, but just cut it in segments and then scoop out the inside, and you could fill it with your filling like that, steam it, and then the thing that I made had like a sauce you could pour over. So that's another. Those are another couple of ways you can eat it.
Fun. Okay, so this question has been patiently waiting since our very first section. So they tried growing, I think, Gailon for the first time in the spring, and it was spindly. Do you recommend growing it in the fall instead?
Yeah, probably because I feel like the length of the day is could be a factor in the spring. I feel like it has more time to grow in the fall before it bolts. So I bet you probably would have better luck. Um, a lot of Asian greens are also cold hardy. So some of my, like I've grown Gailon before where it's overwintered, and very, very early spring, the Gailon is like perfect. Tot soy, or well, it's called tot soy, or like a flat, or sometimes called flat cabbage, is also a really good one to do that way. But yeah, I would definitely try fall and just kind of keep it going and just see how long you can harvest for.
And so, since lemongrass plants do not seem to survive the winter here, can you harvest the stems before winter and freeze them, or do you have another preservation technique that you would suggest?
Yeah, you could do that, or you could dry them. I'm glad someone brought that up because I bought this little. I think it came with four. This little 4 pack. It probably cost like $3. And sometimes if you can find it without the bottoms all dried out, you could actually root them and put it in your garden, and it will last you even longer. And in that case, by the end of the season, yes, you're right. It doesn't. We can't do that here. It doesn't overwinter here. You could just cut it into segments, and you can dry it. That's probably what I would do. Is I'd probably just dry it. Either it probably would dry on fine on its own, or if you need to speed it along, you could use a food dehydrator. And I was just telling my daughter's friend that you can find this probably one stalk cut into a few pieces in a spice jar for like $7 or something crazy. So it's definitely helpful to buy this at the Asian supermarket.
Great. Well, we there are still some questions, but I think I'm going to direct those to your Facebook group. Thank you so much, Wendy, for your sharing these preparations and your expertise. So that concludes our program today.